Dallas, New York City, Quantico, Virginia, Springfield, Illinois. This week, we found out that all were targets of alleged terror plots. From the looks of it, it seems the feds are doing really good work and may even have the upper hand here. But how concerned do we need to be that other terror plots are being planned right now as I speak in the country? Let's bring in Texas Congressman Lamar Smith, a Republican and member of the House Homeland Security Committee. Congressman, thank you so much for talking to us. You know, if it hadn't been for the Patriot Act, it's possible that right now we'd be talking about the 9/11/2009 terror attack or terror attacks right now, isn't it?
Right. That is certainly true. As you just said, there have been 4 terrorist attacks or plots that have been disrupted by the FBI just in the last week. In the last several years, over 400 people killed around the world by terrorists, and who knows what would happen. And the problem here is that the terrorists just have to be successful one time, and Americans are going to lose their lives. Our law enforcement authorities have to be right every single time. And one of the tools that they've used to great advantage is the Patriot Act, particularly the surveillance and investigative provisions in that Patriot Act. But unfortunately, the Patriot Act is now scheduled to expire at the end of this year, just about 3 months away. Congress needs to reauthorize that and make sure those provisions stay intact and are continued.
Yeah, at the end of 2009, as you mentioned, there are 3 key national security provisions. They are set to expire. Right. One of them, surveillance such as wiretapping, which obviously just proved to work to prevent terrorism. So then why would some in Congress consider allowing these surveillance authorities to expire?
Right. The surveillance authority that we're talking about here that has worked so well just this last week is a wiretap authority that actually goes with the individual. It's not for a specific device. It's not just for one cell phone. It's for any cell phone the individual might use or any type of communication the individual might use. It's used now in other forms of crimes, but it needs to be used for terrorist acts. And there are some in Congress that I don't know what they're worried about. To me, we absolutely have to have it. Not too long ago, the FBI director testified before the Judiciary Committee and endorsed those provisions. So we need those surveillance tools for the FBI and for other law enforcement officials to be able to use in the future if we're going to stop these kinds of terrorist attacks.
That imam here in New York who tipped off Najibullah Zazi when he made that phone call and said that the FBI was onto him, that phone call would not have been tapped had it not been for the Patriot Act. So it goes to show that without the Patriot Act, Americans aren't as safe. That's a fact. And today, I mean, this past week, we've been proven time and time again that we can't really live safely without it. Another tool I want to talk about it allows investigators to obtain the business and personal records of terror suspects. What if, now I just want to say, what if investigators weren't able to actually obtain Zazi's receipts where he went and he purchased all those explosives at a hardware store? How much harder would it have made it for prosecutors then to press charges had they not obtained those receipts?
Yes. If we did not have these 2 provisions, the wiretaps, the roving wiretaps they're called, and being able to get to the business or personal records of would-be terrorists, we simply would not be able to stop terrorist attacks. And that records provision that we need literally allows you to go, say, to a hardware store and say, we want to see what that individual bought. Obviously, that's common sense investigation. You have to be able to get those types of bits of information if you're going to build a case, stop a plot, or stop a terrorist attack. So those provisions are absolutely essential. I can't tell you why Congress seems to be dragging its feet. I'm hoping that the Democratic leaders will take it seriously. And Congress is supposed to adjourn in the next month or 2. We need to have these provisions approved, and we need for that Patriot Act to be continued. All
right. Clearly, there are plenty of terrorists on the streets plotting to harm Americans. According to the Pentagon, of the detainees who have previously been released from Gitmo, 1 in 7 have returned to terrorist activities. President Obama wants to release hundreds of the worst of the worst. This is a decision that you hope he plans on taking back, because if he closes Gitmo, what happens to all those terrorists? They join the ones that are in Queens, that are in Texas, that are in Illinois?
Right. I've been to Gitmo. It's a first-class facility. That's exactly where we need the terrorists to stay. There's no good reason to close it. There's no good reason to release any terrorists or would-be terrorists there. And if you transfer them to other countries, which is what we're trying to do, there's no certainty that those countries are going to detain those individuals. That's their decision. It's no longer our decision. So other countries can release those people, and then they're back in the battlefield, as you said, at least 1 out of 7, perhaps more. There's also no good reason to transfer them to the United States. The minute they set foot on U.S. soil, then they can and be entitled to rights that only citizens should have, not terrorists. So the terrorists need to stay right where they are. That's at Guantanamo Bay facility there in Cuba, an American prison, and that's the safest place for them. It's also the safest place for them to be if you want to save American lives.
All right, Congressman